Here to 12 Hats Radio. It's Dave speaking, and today I've got Marco Wilbrink from London. It's great to come onto the show. And Marco, with all my guests on the show, I like to give them a 3-minute elevator pitch. And can you just tell me who you are and what do you do?
Well, thank you for having me. I am a coach, originally from the Netherlands, so you probably hear that in my my speech. That's my trademark. I live in London. I lived for England for 18 years, and I help female entrepreneurial women with high aspirations, even when they face a crisis, to become more through my coaching program, Rise Smarter. And so I have transitioned that. I've been doing that since 2016, when I transitioned into coaching, after being trained both in the US and here in the UK, and since then building my business. So that's what I do. So I'm still busy in how to tackle this and what I want to achieve with it. So that is coming.
Fantastic. And can you describe to my audience what is a typical customer of yours?
Well, that's a good question. I think women come with different aspects to me. I can give you an example because that's maybe the best way of sharing. One woman came for me because she had anger issues and stress, and she had transitioned into a new role, a management role, in a male-dominant environment. And so she wanted basically coaching around how to deal with the stress and the anger. And what came out in the first session, and this is her own wording, that only after 2 sessions we hit basically the real issue and bringing transformation. And then of course that's great, and that's also what I'm aiming for. But that's what I tend to do. You know, what is the original driver, what's going on, and change that, and then improve people's behavior through action steps, coming to a better place.
And have you got any success stories you'd like to share with us?
Well, like this lady, I think people sometimes don't always know why they come to me, which is fine, because that's my job in order to draw it out. And so with her case, she found out that her internal stress that was caused a lot of trouble had a lot to do in her own journey of being a woman. And what came out was influenced by her past, the way how things have happened to her. And when we resolved that, it changed the whole dynamic in her leadership style and in her interaction.
All right.
And so it lowered her stress and being a better place. So, you know, that is just one. I also do coach men, and I have a man who basically came to me going through a divorce. And I coached him around issues that he wanted to deal with, and it basically resulted in him going back to his ex.
Interesting.
And so the relationship was saved. So, you know, anything is possible.
I say, and wow, okay. And in interest of fairness, have you had any failures, and what was the lessons learnt from them?
Me personally, failures. Oh my gosh, countless one. I think 5 years ago, there was probably the biggest one, where I went sadly through a divorce myself that was unwanted, and it came as a surprise. And there was an affair involved with my ex, and you know, and that was hugely devastating. So I had to come to terms with that. But I lost, as a consequence, a lot of things, and yeah, hitting rock bottom, having experienced a personal earthquake, was so devastating. I was even suicidal. And in that process, I had a kind of a spiritual encounter that really helped me to get out of this, or let's say it started a transformational process. But of course, I had to come to terms with my mistake, my you know, messing up, because I think that's the reality. Initially, I had a kind of response of, you know, blaming, but soon I discovered that's not going to help anyone. And so I had to have an honest look, and the honest look was, you know, what am I responsible for from a relationship point of view. But I think when you go through this kind of trial, you ask tougher questions, and then you look also back over your life, and then you think, you know, and this is probably very thought-provoking, but at the end of the day, the quality of our thinking determines the quality of our life and the results that we produce. And so if you're not happy with our results, that is traced back to, well, how are we thinking? And that's quite confronting, because when the results don't lie, it's in your face. You can either ignore it and run, or basically realizing, okay, this is not a good result, so what do I need to take in order to improve it? And as you know, as we all probably can relate, navigating this sense of failure, am I good enough, that was initially was hard to navigate. The lack of confidence, because your confidence get a hit. But I think encountering that journey, had counseling in order to help me process the grief of loss, the grief of dreams, the grief of, a death of a relationship for 21 years. Having coming to terms with that, but then also coming to a place of acceptance and letting go. And then how can I change this pain into a gain? How can I take this disadvantage into an advantage? How can I transform this into gold for somebody else? And that has basically led me into a journey of transformation.
Oh wow!
And
speaking of transformation, how can you give advice to my listeners, how tips to how to transform their lives now? Like, a third of humanity is now in lockdown and going through this whole great reset. Is there any nuggets of gold you'd like to share with us?
Well, that's a very good one. I think for me, a lot of the lessons that I've learned through my own crisis, and this whole crisis for me now feels like a rehearsal, strangely enough, because when you're faced with uncertainty on so many different levels, no income, no food, when that happened, and when it happened for me, you learned to navigate that. And some of the lessons that I put really much of emphasis on. And that's what I would recommend people when you are faced with this kind of lockdown, where things are completely uncertain, you have no clue what things are going to happen. Invest in your own personal growth. Invest in the quality of your thinking. Because yes, anxiety, stress, and your depression will all lurking around the corner. But what I've noticed, again, also through my own experience, you have to tell your brain, your mind, what to think. I initially, my mind was like a war zone. Anxiety levels were high. I had panic attacks. And through my journey, I began to realize, and through reading and listening to podcasts and also some therapy, I began to understand how does the brain works. And so it's so important, I realize now, what you focus on, you empower, where your energy flows, where your attention goes. So we have to put passport control on our thinking, just like you had the border control, with is this virus getting in or not? It's very interesting how many people really ask themselves questions about their thought life. You see, because if we entertain certain thoughts and we focus on it, it starts to grow. It's just the nature of it. And so we want to see that changed. We have to basically take it captive and realize, wait a minute, where is this thought leading me? So that's one thing. And of course, establish a new routine. Challenge yourself to grow in something new, whether it's a new skill or hobby or whatever, but push yourself out of your comfort zone, particularly in a crisis. I cannot tell you. People sometimes ask me after this, how the heck, did you develop that kind of strength when you had nothing? I think crisis is an opportunity to make sure that your leadership capacity rises, and that means you have to change your perspective. It's not what happens to you, but how you respond that determines the factor. So take the things in an advantage. Yes, it's sad. I know a lot of people have been affected in so many different ways, and I have deep empathy for that. But at the other hand, I also refuse to go into a fear mindset thinking, because that will not lead me to anything. It will just stops creativity. It stops, it starts to shut you down instead of opening you up. Connect with people. One of the things that I did now, and this is why we now have this conversation, is I thought, what? How can I use this in a way of different growth? And I thought, I'm going to just see if I can get invitations for a podcast interview, because I thought I've never done it before. To be honest, I was a bit hesitant because it's out of my comfort zone, but hey, I have to practice what I preach. So here we go. And I've had so many interesting conversations with people. It widens your horizon. It's just another example. What else you can do? I know, yeah, with limited space, don't let your limited space stop you for doing something.
Hmm.
You know, we are sometimes imprisoned by our own limited beliefs unless we give them up and start something new.
Yep. So really, it's just a opportunity for a brand new beginning. It's just that everyone gets a clean slate
Yeah.
and
I
just
think, yes. Well, I think, and that, again, a crisis is, I know it's, please hear me. Of course, it depends in which phase you are in the crisis. You know, initially you have people having a shock, depending on what is happening and a trauma. And of course, that needs validation and acknowledgement. But then people navigate to a place of acceptance and letting go.
hmm.
And then when you're in the third phase, which is basically, okay, what are new ways to explore? That is the ideal place to come to. And then the reset is important, because it means a reset to me means an upgrade.
Hmm.
If people think, are we going back to normal? I think that's over. The
Yep.
normal is over, and you have to
Absolutely.
come to terms with that. And of course that means maybe even sadly also a grief, because what was familiar is now gone, and we have to allow that grief to surface. But at the same time, we have to make a decision. Okay, it has changed. So how can we make this, turn this into an advantage point? How can we make it something into something positive? And that we can look back. I think personally, would it not be amazing that if we look back, not denying the pain that it has caused, but even that, if you look back, it brought the community better, closer together. We talk less about the negativity, but we talk more about how much positive things that have happened as a consequence. That will be amazing. But again, of course, that's a personal choice
Yep.
that everyone has to take.
Yeah. Well, I keep saying this probably is the year that will change all of us, and yeah, I totally agree. This is we'll look back on 2020 as that year that
Yeah.
everything everything was brought forward, everything changed, and I think we can't go back. There's no way we're going back to what life was, and I think this is
I hope, in a sense, I will be curious if from years from now, are we reverting back to old default mechanisms, thinking,
yeah.
and that's why I would like to challenge people who are listening, see this reset as an upgrade to something better,
Yeah.
not to something less, but to something better. Even though it may not appear like that, sometimes when I had my crisis, it didn't came in a package that I liked, but now I see the gift in it. But the package
Mm.
was horrendous. I would not recommend it to anyone. But now I have seen the gift in the adversity. And I think if you can come to that kind of place, there, this happened, but I was able to change it into something better. Then that would be an amazing story for people.
Yep. And speaking of curiosity, what is driving your curiosity right now?
What is my curiosity driving me now? Well, to be honest, so many things. I feel sometimes I'm exploding, because I have a creative mind, and I think that's the whole point. You see, because this is so freeing. You see, when you have come to a place where you had nothing, when you're stripped back to your authentic self, that you basically are beginning free from all the things that you thought that you so much needed. It creates a freedom. And so now I'm exploring. My curiosity is now drawing. I would like to be better in my writing, so I'm exploring storytelling. I'm just attending a masterclass about storytelling, how to do that better. So I think there's a book coming. And now this whole podcast thing, even though I think I have to figure this out, what came out of this as a result of the crisis. My daughter is 2 hours away from me in long distance. And we connected a lot via video call and chats. And we had in the past always this discussion, we need to start our own podcast. And so guess what? We start now our podcast, which is basically between a father and a daughter, authentic conversations about life, relationship choices, and from different generations, giving a perspective. So that is new. What else? Well, of course, I'm a coach, so I keep on developing my skills. So that's no doubt. I want to launch a tribe. I'm thinking to create a tribe of Rise Smarter,
Wow.
even after a crisis, to help people to become stronger and become more. So that is in the pipeline. Well, I can go on, but you know,
it's like I opened up Pandora's box, really, isn't it?
well, I like the way how you say that, because there's more possibility out there. Yeah, but for example, but I have to give it to perspective. I still have a laptop, for example, that's almost falling apart, but it hasn't stopped me to keep on doing the things I do.
Yeah.
You see, so even though you can have limited means, it doesn't mean it can stop you. People are always amazed that you think, well, how the heck did you do all this? You say, well, just go with what you have and then multiply. And so it's not about how much wealth you have or how much talent you have, because I think sometimes the mistake people make is just start with what you got and start multiplying it. And that's how I grew also in my skill.
Yeah, absolutely. That whole notion of being bottom up, I think that's got a lot of traction now. I totally agree with you. A little bit of fun now. If 12-year-old Marco was walking into the room right now, what advice would you give him?
What advice? Good question. I just wrote a post a couple of weeks ago about a photo of me, probably around age 6. And this post is about what would you say to him? So it's very, or what would he ask you? You know, because I will also be curious. Will I get married? Will I be rich? Referring to the story of Doris Day, and I think this other famous guy, I forgot his name now, a beautiful child, John Lennon.
Yeah.
What would I say to the 12-year-old? You have what it takes. You know, don't be so hard on yourself. You have the potential. You can do anything you like to become, and give him a good hug.
Yeah. And finally, is there any lighthearted stories you'd like to share with my listeners?
A life story.
Yeah.
Gosh. Well, where do I start? A life story. That's a big question, because where do I start? Well, in light of the crisis, I think what I would love people to encourage, to have more conversation with strangers. And why is that so powerful? I just got a text message or a message via my LinkedIn profile of someone who spoke in 2017 and had a conversation in London on Piccadilly. And they were complete strangers. And he just referred to that conversation. And so now we have this connection. That's just one example. But to give you the power of conversation, one day I was in a coffee place. I lived not in London, I lived in Winchester. It's more in the south, in a way, of England. And I didn't have resources enough, because I was still in my crisis, recovering, etc. But I started this whole coaching journey. And so one day I was in this coffee place, busy with my laptop. And then a woman was sitting opposite me, and she was doing her bit. And we ended up having a conversation. And after 1.5 hours of this conversation, she hired me on the spot. Now, that was, of course, amazing in itself, but that was not the intent. But these encounters I had regularly. And the reason why I'm saying this is, it's not about boasting about me, but it's about having a conversation with a stranger, how enlightening that can be. I had another conversation, for example, with a young boy who was busy with his studies at another coffee place in the sun. As you can already probably have discovered, I love coffee places because it's a great place to be and meet people. And this guy, I also had a conversation with, talking about his study. And he had some personal stuff he wanted some advice, which basically, helped him with. And then I lost track of him a couple of months. I didn't saw him. And then one day I was at the same coffee spot, and then suddenly I got this bump into my shoulder. And there he was. And he said, man, it was so great that we spoke, blah, blah, blah. And he introduced me later to his mom, who was also there. So the reason why I'm saying this, it's so great just to have a conversation with somebody, because that ripple effect has huge impact. And And if, just to let people know, that was not my normal routine. My background was that I had a speech problem. That's how I grew up. And I was in one sense not that kind of stepping out kind of person. But the interesting thing is the crisis that I went through pushed me into new areas. And I thought through my coach training, I realized, how can I just add value to people by just listening to them? And it opened a complete new world of meeting interesting, amazing people, where with some of them became clients, some of them became friends, but they all started as strangers. And so I hope that will inspire people who are listening. The next time, of course, I'm aware there's this lockdown going on, but if you get an opportunity, start a conversation with somebody. If it's a dog, you say, oh, that's a nice dog. And there you go, because that's very interesting. You can simply start any conversation with someone. Of course, you have to be sensitive. If people don't want it, that's fine. But no agenda, then just being genuinely interested. So that's just one story, but I have so many. So it's up to you if you want to ask more.
I think that'll definitely be a good little bit of bait for my listeners to go out and multiply. I think that's a great one. Thanks, mate.
Yes.
Yeah. So thank you very much for coming onto the show. I think there's quite valuable lessons there. And where can we find you?
You can find me on marcostephano.com. That's my website. And Marco Stephano sounds Italian, although I'm Dutch. So I don't know where that came from, but I love the name now. Stephano is written by PH, by the way. So it's a bit unusual writing. So I'm on Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn, the professional network. I will be, as I said earlier, I will have my own podcast as well, which will be coming. But the website will provide resources, which I'm busy updating, as you can imagine, because I have so many other new ideas, but that has to be reflected in the website. But that's where you can find me.
Well, thank you very much.
Just to say for people who are interested, I have a focus call related to the Rise Smarter program. And so you can reach out to me through this podcast if that interests people. Happy to have a conversation.
You heard it here first. Well, Marco, thanks very much for coming on again, and we'll invite you back some other day.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
Take care.
Bye. Hi guys, it's Dave from 12 Ounce Media Lab. If you like what you see, like and subscribe down below, and make sure you support me on Patreon. This is the 12 Hats signing out.